Welcome back to Book Break. Today we're going to do a whistle-stop literary tour through the 20th century. We have chosen what we think might be some of the best books of each decade, from the 1900s to the 1990s. So I have been asking the team and we have come up with our selection of 2 books from each decade that we think deserve to go down in history as the best books of that decade. But that's just our opinion, so I would love to know what you think. Do leave your comments below of any books that you think might be contenders. Starting in the 1900s, we picked The Scarlet Pimpernel by Baroness Orczy and The Hound of the Baskervilles by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. So The Scarlet Pimpernel is based on Baroness Orczy's stage play of the same name, which was one of the most popular stage shows in London, and so when the novel came out afterwards, it was an instant success. And for The Hound of the Baskervilles, well, we knew we had to get a Sherlock Holmes in here somewhere, but which one? How to choose? It was almost impossible, but The Hound of the Baskervilles is arguably one of the most famous stories of all time, so we had to pick it. For the 1910s, we picked The Autobiography of an Ex-Coloured Man by James Weldon Johnson and My Antonia by Willa Cather. So, Autobiography of an Ex-Coloured Man, despite its title, is a novel, and it was pretty controversial when it first came out. It's got themes of racism and of the conflict between black pride and passing. On the flip side, My Antonia was a massive success right from when it first came out, and is now considered Willa Cather's first masterpiece. When we got to the 1920s, well, our English teachers were right. The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald has earned its spot on this list. Interestingly, F. Scott Fitzgerald, when the book first came out, thought that all of his reviewers had completely misunderstood the novel. Even the most positive reviews he felt had somewhat missed the point, so I wonder if we've got it right now. For the 1920s, we also picked Passing by Nella Larsen, another book that tackles what were, at the time, forbidden topics of racism and passing, and this book has got an ending that still provokes debate today. For the best books of the 1930s, we started with Their Eyes Were Watching God by Zora Neale Hurston, another book that was not well received when it first came out. It was rediscovered in the 1970s and is now beloved, was recently included in a list of the 100 most influential novels of all time. On the other hand, Brighton Rock by Graham Greene is a thriller that is so popular it has been adapted again and again and again. 2 films, 3 plays, a radio adaptation, and even a musical. 2 books we love from the 1940s are 1984 by George Orwell and I Capture the Castle by Dodie Smith. 1984 is a dystopian novel predicting a terrifying future that has come true in a lot of ways and includes a lot of words and phrases in here that have slipped into our common use and you might not know originally came from this book. Things like doublespeak, thought police, and of course Big Brother. I Capture the Castle is a much more gentle novel about an eccentric family living in a crumbling castle. I know a lot of people who would list this as their favourite book. From the 1950s, we're recommending A Town Like Alice by Neville Shute and The Tiger in the Smoke by Marjorie Allingham. A Town Like Alice is a romance novel set in Australia shortly after the Second World War and written by a British author who just loved Australia. The Tiger in the Smoke is a really good vintage crime novel written by one of the golden age crime writers. But this book is quite different from some of her earlier books from the 30s because Detective Albert Campion in this book doesn't just have to solve a single mystery, he has to reckon with a serial killer. The 1960s is when the world fell in love with V.S. Naipaul. A House for Mr. Biswas was not his first novel, but the first to achieve worldwide acclaim and to launch him into being quite as famous as he is now. The 1960s also gave us The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie by Muriel Spark. This book has had a film adaptation with Maggie Smith in the title role, so that is a sign of a very important book. From the 1970s, we've got Oreo by Fran Ross, a satire that was so ahead of its time in the 70s that it actually fell into obscurity shortly after it was first published, but has since acquired cult classic status. And talking of cult classics, the 70s also gave us The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. And we all know that Hitchhiker fans are mega fans. They speak in a language that the rest of us can only dream of understanding. Like, what on earth is Towel Day? Actually, I do know what Towel Day is because Jean made a video for us on this channel explaining the world of The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, so I'll link to that video below. For From the 1980s, we picked White Noise, which is Don DeLillo's breakout work. This book inspired the name of the band, Airborne Toxic Event, and its legacy is only growing. It is soon to be a movie starring Adam Driver and Greta Gerwig. And of course, from the 80s, we also had to pick a book by the great Jamaica Kincaid. It was hard to narrow it down, but Annie John, this classic coming-of-age story, is probably her most famous of all. If you want a guide to all of the works of Jamaica Kincaid, I've got a video linked below. And finally, we picked two books with very different vibes from the 1990s. Half of the team picked American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis, a transgressive novel about a young investment banker by day, gruesome serial killer by night. The other half of the team picked Bridget Jones's Diary by Helen Fielding, which is a hilarious year in the life of a single 30-something living in London and all of her ridiculous adventures. I'll leave you to battle it out in the comments which one you think deserves the title of the best book from the 1990s. I think our audience is going to be pretty evenly split. I will tell you I was in team Bridget Jones, and for that reason I am now going to link to a video I made here on Book Break before all about why Bridget Jones is still such an icon today. So do click through and watch that one, and I'll see you next time.